Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Down to Earth Astronomy. Today we're taking a look at a game called Fractured Space. It's a fairly new game. It is still in alpha, so it is in a very early stage of development. But we're gonna take a look at it at the game's current state, but do keep in mind this is very early on in the game's development phase. So the gameplay of the game is, it reminds me a lot of games like World of Tanks, with warships, Armored Warfare, War Thunder even, where you play as two teams against each other, and you have areas that you have to cap. The main difference, of course, being this is with ships, with lasers and big guns and missiles, rather than tanks and planes and boats or whatever you play with in the other games. But it is basically World of Tanks in space, and I think that the developers have actually been quoted saying that that was what they wanted to do, and I think they achieved that very well. But anyway, let's go into a bit more details. As the game is right now, you have a hangar, which is what we're in right now, and you have different types of ships you can select, just as you would expect. If you go into your shipyard, you can see that the ships are divided into three different categories. These are for three different ship manufacturers, and you can then, as you progress through the game, get bigger and bigger and better ships. One funny thing though is that the experience you gained is not locked to a single ship. It is divided to the whole company. So for instance, if I take the Titan company, if I am fighting in one of these ships, I'll gain experience, and I can then use that experience to upgrade any of the ships from this company. And that means if I encounter a ship that I don't like, that doesn't really fit my playstyle, I can simply play something else from that company, and I can then essentially skip it, just go over it to the next one. There are currently a fairly limited amount of ships, but again, the game is in a very early stage of development. They also included some premium ships, which I guess is how they're going to fund it. I assume that you'll be able to buy like cosmetics and premium ships and stuff like that. So that is that. You can of course also change the loadout of your ship, and if you go in here to the loadout, we can see again that you have the base modules and we have different upgrades. Even though the upgrades are not really upgrades per se, if you look at the different versions of, for instance in this case, the main weapon, you would often have at the beginning a fairly medium-sized weapon with a medium rate of fire. Then you would have a fast-firing version of a slow-firing version, and of course the fast-firing version do less damage per shot, and the slow-firing version here do more damage per shot, but overall the DPS of the weapon doesn't really change. So this really is up to choice, and maybe even the ships that you are against, that you can actually choose what kind of weapon you want to use, because you can choose this after you've seen the enemy team, but I'll get back to that later. Each ship has will have a main weapon that will have very fast recharging that you can use for your main damage dealer. It will have a secondary weapon, which varies from ship to ship, what it is, how much damage it does, and the effect, because both of these weapons will have some kind of debuff effect on the enemy ship. So you can either slow them down, remove some of their armor, or whatever. You get the idea. All ships will also have missiles, homing missiles that you can fire. Again, you can upgrade these as you see fit. And then they will have two special abilities. In this case with the Sentinel, this is a fairly fast mobile ship, and it really focuses a lot on mobility and using mobility to enable to control the flow of the battle and to control the engagement. So it has like a local boost, where it comes in three different versions. This is actually an area of effect thing, so you can use this boost to increase your own propulsion and as well as your allies, and then it will also slow the enemy. And the base version, for instance, is 20% boost to yourself and your allies, and 20% reduction to the enemy within the area. The second one is then 30% to yourself and 10% negative bonus to the to the enemy. Sorry. And the last one is then the opposite way around, where you get a large debuff to the enemies, but a slow increase to yourself. So that's again, what are you playing against? If you're playing against a very slow team with ships with a large amount of armor, then you don't really need to slow them down that much. So then you could probably go for the one that would boost your own team. If you're playing against an enemy team with a lot of small, fast ships, then maybe you should go for one that would slow them down to try and keep them close, so you can actually kill them, let them just run off. And the same thing with many of the other modules. And each of these bonuses, as far as I can see, all of these different equipments are unique to that specific ship. So this is just the modules that this ship have. Other ships may have abilities to increase the ability to spot the enemy, or some other kind of debuffing or buffing or healing, repairing ships. It changes a lot from ship to ship. So each ship is very unique, which makes the game a bit more difficult, so you can't just reliably predict how what the other ship do unless you know exactly what his special abilities is. But let's go ahead and get into some combat, and then we can have a look how the game actually plays out. Okay, so here we are, and we are now at the ship selection. We have about to start a fight, and this is the point where you select what ship you're going to bring to the battle, because you can then look at the ships that the rest of your team are bringing, and then select accordingly. So you would get a nice balanced team. And as soon as you selected your ship, we're going to wait for everybody else to be ready. And as soon as either this counter runs down or everybody is ready, the enemy team will be revealed, so we can see who and what we are fighting. And at this point, which we will see in a bit, we'll then be able to select what kind of equipment we want to use for this battle. So now that we can see the enemy team, we can then say, okay, if there was a lot of fast ships, that what I talked about earlier, then you can maybe change the effects around depending on the enemy ship types. But we're just going to keep this setup for now. Click ready, and then the game will start in a bit. Okay, so here we are in the actual battle, and I'm just going to go ahead real quick and explain the base setup of the game. As you can see on the map in the lower right corner, the game is divided into 5 different areas. We have the ally station at the bottom, which is the area we need to protect. Then we have the enemy base at the top, which we need to capture. And then on the either side we have the alpha and beta areas, which are like small corridors where you can fight and try to take out the enemy ships. But you can also capture these mining stations, 3 small ones you can see in the middle, which will give you points, will level up your team. And then each team has a forward station, which are these large stations at either end. Once you capture one of these, if you capture the enemy forward station, I should say, then you gain job access to the enemy base, and you go there and actually begin to capture their main base. Likewise, if they capture our forward station, one of our forward stations, then they can jump to our base, and we need to go back and defend. The last area is the gamma area in the middle. This will unlock once every 5 minutes, and once it unlocks, you can capture the station in the middle, which will give a boost to your whole team for the next, I think, 5 minutes, until the next time the gamma area opens. So it can be a good tactical advantage to have that station if you feel like you have the forces to invest. But let's go ahead and let's here we are a bit later in the game combat. We can see we already have a ship at the enemy base, and they managed to capture back their forward station, and I decided I want to go and try to recapture it. And this is when I discover one of the enemy ships, who was the one who actually captured it. So I decided, of course, I have to go after him. You see I dropped my propulsion field just to get a bit closer to him. I don't think he has seen me yet. Now he has. I dodged the first incoming fire, and I keep shooting at him, and now I'm in range. So I shoot off my my missiles, and that rips off his armor at one side of the ship, which means I'll do increased damage. But he of course turns around to try and protect from the weak side. I get around him to the side where I ripped off his armor, which means I can do a very large amount of damage to him very, very quickly. And fairly quickly he goes down. He tries to run away, but I have enough range to take him down. But as I was fighting him, another one appears. And I'm already at a very low hit point, so I decide I need to get out of here. I use my speed boost to try and get behind the shield of the forward station to try and shield me from his incoming fire. Unfortunately, he noticed what I was doing and followed me. So I try to fight him. I can see I begin to have backup from one of my teammates, but I'm very low on hit points. I try to get away, but unfortunately I didn't pay attention and I flew straight into a rock, and well, that cost me my ship. Luckily I'll just respawn in 30 seconds, so yeah. But you can really use the rocks and the environment to protect you and to help you when you actually fight. And we'll see more of that later on. Okay, here we are a bit later on in the game. And so you can see I'm here with one of my teammates, and we're trying to capture the beta area. And this is when I spot an enemy ship. Now, my teammate is a bit behind me, so I decide to use this rock, and there's another one, so there are at least two of them. So I use this rock to try and stay out of sight. He drops a buoy to try and spot me, to both let them get a bit closer and to get my teammate within firing range. Now that he is here, I come out from behind the rock, right in his face. I fire the missiles a bit early before I manage to target him. But I'm right on top of him and we rip him apart very, very quickly. You can see he turns around. I think he's trying to get away, but it's just too little too late. I try to stay underneath the station to shield me from fire from the other guy. Not doing a terribly good job at it, but he's not really focusing on me, so that's okay. We get the first guy down, and I immediately shift my fire to the next one. Try to get beneath him, underneath him, shoot up some rockets to rip off his armor, and he's gone. Now, what you will notice at the left side, it says return to allied station. And that's what I talked about earlier. When you capture these mining stations, you get experience, and as you gain experience, you can see at the top, currently it says that we are level 6 as a team, and the small next to it there's a small 5. That's my level. That means that I can actually level up if I go to an allied station, and I can then select one of these upgrades from the menu out at the side, either an offensive or defensive or utility upgrade. So you have to go to either your home base or to one of the forward stations that you have captured. So I wanted to go to this forward station and capture it, but that's when one of the guys comes back, one of the guys we just fought earlier. He fires his missiles, but miss because it didn't target lock me. So again, I rip off his armor and try to stay on that side of him, because now I know his armor is weak. And even though we are the same tier ship, you can see I have taken very little damage and he is down. So I'm going to very quickly capture this forward station, which is also going to give me the ability to upgrade and get some repairs to my ship. And it will also unlock jump access to the enemy base. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight to the enemy base, just to get fully repaired. Now, along the side of the station you will notice there are these turret generators which I'm targeting now. If you shoot them, they will disable sections of the automated defense on this station. And this can be a very, very good good advantage to have disabled some of these as earlier in the game as possible, because these turret stations, they hurt, and they hurt a lot. So if you disable these generators, that means you will reduce the amount of damage that you take from the station. The small alarm you can hear going off is incoming missiles, and you can see as soon as I get incoming missiles, I launch my point defense, which is like a defense for small drones and missiles. Now, I begin to take a lot of damage, so I used my boost ability to get away from the guy shooting at me. Of course, there is still the station. I noticed there's a turret generator with very little health. I tried to take it down, but unfortunately it was too little, too late, and my ship explodes. But luckily again, I will respawn, and the respawn time will increase each time you die up till a minute, I think, is the max. Now, at the top of the screen, you can see that we managed to capture 32% of the enemy base. That's not too bad. When that reaches 100%, we win the game. But let's move on to a stage a little bit later in the game.
Johnson reporting. Securing from jump settings.
Okay, here we are. We are a bit later on in the game. I just jumped to Alpha because we have that corridor unlocked, and I'm about to jump to the enemy base to try and continue the capturing process. What you'll notice is in 20 seconds the Gamma area will unlock. So right now we could either choose to go for that area to try and get the buff, or we could try to attack their base. I decide, well, let's go for the base. There are currently only one ship here actually defending the base. I again begin immediately try to get out of range of him. He tries to jump out, but he is dead very quickly. When you activate your jump drive, you take an additional amount of damage, and take a lot more damage. So I begin to work down the turret generators again, and what you can see they've done now, they decided to go for the Gamma area instead of defending their base. That means that right now there is no one defending their base, and we are capturing fast. Another turret generator goes down. They are still focusing on the area. One guy comes back because he noticed that we were capping the base. It was too little, too late, and that is about it. We win the battle. Yeah, that's basically it. That's the game, and in the current stage, as I said, this is in alpha, but I think it's very polished for an alpha game. I really hope you liked the video. Give it a like down below if you did. Consider subscribing to the channel. This has been Down to Earth Astronomy, and until next time, have a good one.